And we're going to begin class 4 here of the MJE pre-Beit Midrash program. Okay. We're up to Gate for homework, or for you guys to review, the beginning of the introduction of the Mishnah Torah. And we're going to get into that. And we're going to give a specific example of the core elements of the Torah, Torah Shebechsav, Torah Shel Peh, or what the Rambam calls Torah Mitzvah, by the mitzvah pruvu, be fruitful and multiply. Okay, so we're going to get into it. So before I get into it, for the benefit of everybody, we are going to do a little quick summary of what we accomplished till now. Sort of 4 elements. Okay. By way of question, what is the thematic pasuk of the entire Mishnah Torah? Say in English or Hebrew. Where's the one that he puts on the book itself, and actually every one of the 14 books? Yes, Abraham calling out. Did he call out what? Vayikra b'shem Hashem ke'olam. He called out in its form, unfortunately. Vayikra b'shem Hashem ke'olam. He called out in the name of God, the eternal, the Lord of the universe. Okay, so what did we deduce? What did we deduce? Why did the Ram put that as the beginning of the entire book of mitzvot of Mishnah Torah? What basically does that really mean? If that's in the beginning of the whole book, what really does that say about the whole book? And by extension, all the mitzvot. All right. So basically, to put each and every step of learning about the mitzvot is really a responding to the redemptive call of Avram Avinu, of him calling out in the name of God. In other words, if this is the introduction to all mitzvot, therefore responding and learning about every mitzvah is really part of a redemptive growth in that program that Maimonides is viewing that he's following in Avram's footsteps. That's point number 1. Point number 2, the second verse what's the second verse that the Ram puts in the introduction to his entire Mishnah Torah? And this is from King David. What's the verse? So the book. Exactly. Lord's on fire. Lord's on fire. Then I will not be ashamed when I look at all mitzvahs. Therefore, that implies what? So what was the Mishnah of King David? What was he trying to, as being the CEO, the chief educational officer of the Jewish people? What was he trying to accomplish? So notice how he didn't say that when you look at the mitzvot, you won't be ashamed. How did he express it? In the personal. Then I will not feel ashamed when I look at all the mitzvot. So last time we talked about that there are 2 worlds, if you will. There's the world of the rat race, and there's the world of Avraham Avinu's world, the world of Kel Olam, the world of the eternal Lord. In the rat race, you feel bad when you pull up to the party with a car which is 10 years old. Because within the expectation of the rat race, if you're really successful, you will have a current car. In the educational world of Avram Avinu and King David, who's following in his mission, you feel busha because you're not growing from, you feel bad when you are not acting upon opportunities for growth. Not for demonstrating my greatness to other people, because it's really irrelevant. Rather he said, I look at all the mitzvahs, and I'm not using that to be a tool of growth. Either it's a road activity, it's a meaningless activity, it's purely just habit. I feel bad because I know that this has the potential to be growth-inducing, but I'm not doing it. So that's what he's saying. So King David is saying, when I peer, intellectually at all the mitzvot, then I will not feel shame. So we have two. Shame can come from feeling inadequate based upon what world you're in. If you're in the rat race world, you feel bad if you don't have the coolest house, you don't have the coolest car, the coolest spouse, the coolest whatever marks of excellence is that society identifies as being awesome in the rat race world. In the Avram and King David world and Don Melech world, you feel bad that you're not using your life to maximize your growth. That's the two different worlds. Okay, so then the Avram is calling to us to join his world. That's why he's Vayikra b'Shem Hashem. He said, "Come on down. It's the one you want to live in. Don't live in that world. Don't be very painful and not too meaningful." Okay. Also, then to put all together. So what is he really mean? Is really we have the character of Ibn Gabir, who why was he feeling bad? He was feeling bad. Why was he feeling bad? What? Right. So he felt so even Jewish learning. Here's the idea: even Jewish learning could also be involved in the rat race world. Oh, you don't know half of the Shas, half of the Babylonian Talmud. Loser. You don't know every halach in the Shulchan Aruch. Loser. So what was Avram? Avram, what the Rambam was telling Ibn Gabir, learning. First of all, don't leave the rat race world of definition of learning, of basically making learning a function of accomplishment and being the Mr. Smarty Pants who can answer all the questions. Rather, it's a person who has an honest interest of truth, and whether learning one pasuk or one halacha in a full, robust way, they're involved in learning. And it makes a difference if they learn it in English or in Hebrew or in Aramaic or in Arabic. It makes a difference. These are all terms that are valuable insofar as if you assess learning in a rat race accomplishment world. Oh, so you're not doing the act in the cultural appropriate manner. So Rambam trying to heal Ibn Gabir, to have the courage to ignore that and be involved in really learning. And not what people say learning is, with certain externalities of learning, rather real learning. I'm just giving, that's basically and he should, trying to pump him up, and he should feel optimistic that you'll learn Hebrew slowly, and it's going to be going good. So that's basically in a nutshell what we've accomplished in the last three. Those are the main points. So let's take it on to the text here of the Mishnah Torah. Who'd like to read the English here? All the mitzvot given to Moshe. Who'd like to read Bavakasha? Yeah, simple Bavakasha.
All mitzvot given to Moshe at Mount Sinai were given with an explanation as implied by Exodus 24:12. And I will give you the tablets of stone, the Torah, and the mitzvah. The Torah refers to the written law, the mitzvah, to its explanation. God commanded us to fulfill the Torah according to the instructions of the mitzvah. The mitzvah is called the oral law.
All right, stop right there. Okay, so the Rambam takes the verse that what Moshe got three things at Mount Sinai. He got the tablets of stone, right? Those are what they call the 10 Commandments in the tablet form, in the stone form, and he got a Torah. Well, that's the written text scroll. There's a mitzvah. So he understands the mitzvah. He didn't get from this is from the Talmud itself. The mitzvah is really the explanation of every individual mitzvah. Okay, so that's called the oral law. So there's two components.
The mitzvah is the oral law?
Yeah, because the Torah says that Moshe got, and I'm going to give you, God's speaking to Moshe, I'm going to give you the tablets of stone, so that's the tablets. The Torah, that's like the scroll. And then there's the mitzvah, which is the explanation of the mitzvot. That's how the oral law learns that verse. All right, let's read on a little more.
Moshe, our teacher, personally transcribed the entire Torah before he died. He gave the Torah scroll to each tribe and placed another scroll in the ark as a testimonial. as states, take this Torah scroll and place it beside the ark, and it will be there as a testimonial.
Good.
The mitzvah, i.e., the explanation of the Torah, he did not transcribe. Instead, he commanded it verbally to the elders, to Yoshua, and to the totality of Israel, as states, be careful to observe everything that I prescribe to you. For this reason, it is called the oral law. Even,
Go on. Yeah, a little more.
Even though the oral law was not transcribed, Moshe, our teacher, taught it in its entirety in its count to the 70 elders. Eleazar, Pinchas, and Yoshua received the tradition from Moshe. In particular, Moshe transmitted the oral law to Yoshua, who was his primary disciple, and instructed him regarding it. Similarly, throughout his life, Yoshua taught the oral law. Many elders received the tradition from him. Eli received the tradition from the elders and from him to her. Samuel received the tradition from Eli and his court. David received the tradition from Samuel and his court.
Okay, so basically what the Ram then goes in his introduction to the Mishnah Torah is he gives 40 generations from Moses to Rabbi Judah the prince who wrote down the Mishnah. So he's showing that really that there was a transmission generation after generation from Moshe to Joshua, et cetera, through generations. Good question.
Yeah, can I just ask?
Sure.
I want to clarify the source.
Yeah.
So is this, my mom is intro to the Mishnah, the blue book?
Yes.
Is that what this is from?
No.
No, this is different.
That was written about 15 to 20 years earlier.
Okay.
He wrote 3 works. One was his commentary on the Mishnah.
Okay.
And in that has that intro.
Okay.
This obviously is the same. That's a little more expansive than that on the issue of the transmission.
Yeah.
Here, this is introduction to his Mishnah Torah.
Okay.
And then after the Mishnah Torah, he wrote, in the end of his life, he wrote the Guide to the Perplexed. Those are the 3 primary works of my mind as Rambam. Question?
Yes, and if it's going to go off into a tangent, then
Good.
we don't have to talk about it. Is this where like Reform Jews get that, people were, our leaders or rabbis sat around a table and kind of wrote the Torah because it says kind of people, was tacked on and people wrote things. You know how it's.
Well, it depends. Reform doctrine, well, I can't even speak of one doctrine, but.
Oh, there's more than
one. Well, basically, they, starting in the 1800s, they basically denied the divinity of the Torah. So basically, there was no, in other words, Moshe did not get anything necessarily from God. There is no divine transmission.
Okay.
Period.
Okay, so it's like mostly just the tradition.
It's a human document.
Okay.
And if they subscribe to the documentary hypothesis, it's a multiple human things put together. But that's basically the.
Okay, I was just wondering if that maybe it came from this kind of.
So it depends, this becomes a tremendous dispute among academics that it was the Torah written or rewritten in the time of Ezra, etc.
Okay.
But that's a juicy topic.
Yeah, okay.
Juicy topic. So it says there that he brought the Torah and he read it to them publicly, and they did not know basics such as today's Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so there was a time of great Jewish ignorance, which is not such a their 70-year of exile was not necessarily so awesome for all Jews. There was also a big gap. Some Jews had a lot of knowledge. Some Jews had a little bit of knowledge. You see that in the books of Nehemiah, Ezra, and Nehemiah. So that itself that's a class in its own right. But to keeping it, our goal is to understand. No. To understand the Rambam's his creation of the Mishnah Torah as a textbook of Judaism. So therefore, we need to know what his operating terms are. A separate question is this historically accurate? How do we know? Those are important questions, but you can't do those simultaneously. The question is, what is he saying? What are the elements? So he's saying the elements are there's a Torah, there's a written text, what we call the 5 books of Moses, and there's a oral law which explains those mitzvahs. That's what he's saying. And that's what and Moshe got 3 things. He got the physical tablets, the scroll that he wrote down toward the end of his life, and then there was the oral explanation of those mitzvahs. Those are the 3 elements. And then he tells them there's been a transmission from generation to generation. That's what he's asserting. So, but that itself is unique and strange because what I ask you is, first of all, what are the two types of study? What are the 2 aspects of study of Torah learning? Simple. There's a written Torah, reading the Son, the written, what we call learning the Parsha, learning Chumash, and then we have learning the oral law. Now it gets a little questions. Well, why? First of all, why is there 2? Why isn't there 1? Why is there 2 separate things? What's the educational utility of having it into 2 different formats? I think that's a very, and one is like stories, like we're going to learn this week. There's Yaakov and there's Esav, and then there's the laws of grinding on Shabbos. They seem to be like, how do you unify and harmonize that? It seems to be there's a rule book, there's reading your tax code kind of rule book thing, and then there's stories. And how do you harmonize those 2? They seem to be very, very different. Basic question. So I want to exemplify that by an English exercise here. Turn to the next page. We're going to start with the very first mitzvah as an example. Okay? The very first mitzvah. So let's read. Everybody got this over here? Okay, so let's no problemo. Here you go. Okay, so let's take a look at the this is the last 4 verses of Genesis chapter 1. Who'd like to read? So we'll keep on going.
Where am I reading?
From the actual. This is where now we're going to read the Torah.
Oh, here. And, all right. And God created man and his own Selim.
Selim, yes.
What does Selim mean?
Poorly translated in his own image, but God doesn't have an image, so there's some sort of similitude, some sort of poetic analogous thing to God.
Okay, sorry. And the Selim of God created he, him, male and female, created he them.
Okay.
And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that creepeth upon the earth. Okay,
so God's talking to God. There's Adam and Chava. There's male and female, right? And God blesses them, and He says to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill up the world, replenish the earth, subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the earth, and over every living thing that creepeth upon the earth." Okay. Now, let me just take a little oral law. That's from the written law. Okay, great. Look on the bottom there. This is taken from the Rambam later on in the Rambam Mishnah Torah. Just took you a little piece here. Take a look at 1 on the bottom there. This is from the oral law.
A man is obligated to engage in sexual relations whenever his conjugal duties require, until he fathers children. For this is a positive commandment of the Torah, as states, "Be fruitful and multiply." Okay, stop. So, in Judaism, the man has responsibility to the wife to provide food, clothing, shelter, and sexual satisfaction. She could only say, give him to say, "I'm not interested." I'm just saying that and that has certain frequency depending on, interestingly enough, on the person's profession. In other words, if they travel a lot, then it's less. If they're in town, it's more. But the key thing is the obligation is extant until he has the basic male-female, 2 children, mother, male and female. And where does this come from?
Right from Genesis 1. Okay. Okay.
So how does the obligation change after you have?
Then, if she does not want to have relations, I mean, if it's mutual, they don't have to have. But if he's not filled the mitzvah, she can't say, "I'm not having." He has to be some basic frequency because they have to have because the mitzvah to have children.
But if you already have 4 girls, you just can't afford to have a 5th child.
Okay, so that gets to the question is, but notice you're saying, so under what circumstance can a man not, say that he can't fill his mitzvah, or the family not fill the mitzvah? But we're going to get into that. Let's save that to the end. We're going to get into that. Turn to page. Okay, so I want to ask you guys a couple of questions here, which will get us. Our goal here is to understand the relationship between what the Rambam calls Torah, which is the written law, and the mitzvah, which is the oral law.
So just to be clear, this is from the Mishnah Torah.
This is from the Mishnah Torah, which the Rambam got from the actual.
Okay.
Now, the Rambam did not invent any oral law himself. It's come from the from the Talmuds, either Babylonian and Israeli, Yerushalmi, Jerusalem Talmud, and other sources of the primary, the Mishnah, etc. Okay.
So this is God to Moshe, and this is like Rambam.
The Rambam recasting the oral law from the Talmud, which is the written oral law.
For my brain purposes,
Right.
though.
Okay. Let's get into it. Okay. Now, 1A. I'm going to ask you this question: what part of humanity does the written Torah say is obligated to be fruitful and multiply?
I just read it.
Yeah. So, what part of humanity? Does the written Torah? All of them, right? Because who is the audience of this divine command? Adam and Eve, right? So it's all of mankind. Okay. Number 2, in what context of the larger human mission of on earth is being fruitful, multiplying being said?
We're saying, can I interrupt?
Yes.
We're saying humanity, so we're talking about non-Jews too?
Just from the Torah, from the written Torah. When you read chapter 1, verse 28, God blessed them, talking about Adam and Eve, they're the father and mother of humanity.
Okay.
That's not talking about Jews. It's talking about all humans,
Okay.
right? Follow me on this, Kelly. I'm leading you down the path here, okay? All right. 1B. In context of what larger human mission on earth is being fruitful, multiple, and being said? What is verse 28? Populate the world. Is that it? Okay. What would you call that, really?
I guess be a steward of the world.
Right. To develop a civilization. Right. Not just stewarding the world. That's part of it. So part of the stewardship of the world, part of building the civilization, Kivshua, conquering and subduing it, is being fruitful, multiply. It's a part of that. Okay. Question number 1C. Are the other parts of this larger human mission also concerned to be mitzvot? It sounds that way, but interestingly enough, it's not one of the 613. There's no mitzvah of kivshua, of conquering the world. No technical one of the 613. There's no technical one of the 613 is to have dominion over the fish of the sea and fowl of the air and every little thing that creeps on the earth. That's not a discrete one of the 613. Yet being fruitful and multiply is. Okay? So now I'll ask you the next question. How is the person who is fruitful and multiply come closer to the sanctity of the God of Adam? This is a more tough question. Let's say a person's involved in being fruitful and multiply.
You say that they're also
Okay.
And they're being less selfish. Like if you are going towards that path of being fruitful and multiplying, you're going to have less. Well, not as you're not going to have the ability to maybe have that higher car.
Okay.
You're going to be going towards that path of.
Yeah, but you can
living
you
that
can
way.
have I guess it comes down. This is where it comes down to the question on what is the motivation, because you can have kids for lots of reasons. Not so simple, but let's say within the context of gracious Aleph, the person's having what really, if they're in the chapter, Genesis 1 mentality, and they choose and they elect to have kids. They don't happen to have kids. They choose to have kids, right? What really are they? What do they see themselves doing?
They're start creating a civilization.
Right. They are.
Living.
They are. That's true. They are essentially partnering with God to build the world up.
And I think you can look at it in this time of it being, if you're Orthodox Jews, every time you have another child, you have to think about yeshiva, and that's one less things that
Right.
No, I mean I'm serious. Like that's just less things that you can have in your life.
That's true. That's true. I don't argue with that point. We're going to circle. We'll circle back to that. Okay. Now, so let's circle back to. I want to show remember the way to perceive mitzvah is to compare and contrast a two-world perspective. So, what does having a child mean in a rat race world versus in the kedusha of Avram's world? So, in the rat race world, when is a person going to elect to have a child? So, first of all, only if it serves their agenda. We've all met people, we've all met people, and I've heard this, I'm not really a child. Right? When I have kids, whatever, for their own personal lifestyle, having a child is an impediment. And truthfully, it's a very strong argument. I understand that argument. So the option will be when, maybe never. And the thing is, and if I'm going to have it, it's convenient. Now, why is that the metric of value? From that perspective, what is a child really?
Accessory?
Or a
I was just gonna say the
narcissistic extension of oneself.
Right.
Yeah.
So therefore, if I'm going to indulge in the narcissistic endeavor called having a child, I want to maximize that satisfaction when it's convenient for myself, not to impede my other narcissistic endeavors. I don't want to contradict that, right? So now, how many kids would a person who's in the rat race world have?
1 or 2.
Well, what's the metric of what would you decide? 1, 2, or 6 or 12? What would be?
What they can afford, I guess, and what they
could afford is one of the limiting factor.
what they want to handle, I guess, what they choose, what they want.
But what's the cause of their choice? What is the metric of what are the elements involved?
What's socially acceptable?
Okay, good. What else? What did everybody else have? I don't want to have something either too little that I'm looked down upon, like, oh, well, what are you, unfertile McGee over here? Or what's going on over there? Hey, what is this? The little girl, woman, mom in the shoe there? How many kids do you have in there?
Or maybe what they think is best for their other children and what's best for the family.
In the rat race world, that's not really a high metric. Maybe.
Maybe how many kids their housekeeper can handle.
Right.
What? 2 is the max for one housekeeper.
Right. I'm going to hire more staff. Right.
But it's not simple. It's not like there's a rat race world and there's an Orthodox world. It's not simple.
I'm just using I'm using this sort of this in other words, when Avram came into the world, he was a lone guy, and his world was an idolatrous, status-seeking, magical mentality. Even though Avram has an effect on all the Western world, that mentality is alive and well. And some people may be very overt, and some may be a little bit more subdued. But it's good to, by way of clarification, it's good to have 2 competing paradigms as a heuristic, as an educational tool. Not that there's anybody who's in one it's just as a way to think about it, to have a way of perceiving. Now, what is the now? If you're in the rat race world, what's your interest? What's your parenting model? What's your principle of parenting?
Again, it will be based on the socioeconomic and the social context that you're in. So, like, you have like the tiger mothers,
right?
And they push their kids to, learn 10 languages and play the cello, and
that scares me so
go.
Why is that?
Fighting because they want to because in their social strata they have to get them they have to be desired by schools like Princeton, Harvard, and Yale, and to get that you need to be unique.
Right. So, since my child is really a tool of showing my dominance within the social structure, I have to push my child, whether it's appropriate or not for the child, to do the different activities of excellence, whether it be learning languages and instruments, regardless of their own aptitude or interest. Versus the parent is trying to nurture the inner child to develop what's best for the child. If the child likes to learn languages, great, I'll get him out too. Let him learn French and Spanish. That's wonderful. That's something which is coming internal from the child versus nudging the heck out of the kid. I used to be a yeshiva high school principal. So I saw rather extreme examples of this. Let me just share you one.
Jewish parents can be a lot like this too.
Of course they are. They're worse. They're more. No, they're more intense. Jews are more intense in every way. So I vividly remember the parents talking about their child, and mom and dad both went to the Ivies. And their child have to get into the Ivies. That's the prime directive. There's only one reality. Their child was academically average. Wonderful kid, but they were hot-headed kid like nobody. Breakfast, flashcard, SAT cards. They were like nuts. And, and they're complaining to me, like, he doesn't want to go to the SAT prep course on Sunday. He wants to play ball. Or he wants to be so, and they're just beating on the kid. And they were in such a state of denial about where is the child, what's best for the child. It was really irrelevant. Okay, now, you have to know that desire to have your child to show your personal greatness is a very powerful desire, and every parent will feel that. You will always feel that. You're not going to negate that, but so I don't want to blame them because they were locked in that emotional world. I'm not going to, we all get locked in our own emotional world. I'm not going to disparage them. I'm just saying that they were in that world, and I tried to open up a little bit, perhaps, maybe that might be not the best direction for little Timmy. You know what I mean? So, not successful. So, in that rat race world, the child must be a super achiever because I'm a type A parent and I am, quote unquote, successful, or even worse, I wasn't fully successful. And therefore, that limitation, my child has to fill in where I was lacking. The profound phenomenon, and so that's the mentality of in the rat race world. The child is taken as a partner in the competition to show sovereignty, dominance, and ultimate status. Okay?
Is it really status that the parents want, or are the parents maybe they're so concerned for the child and they think that's sort of the best way to maximize his chances in the world to have a healthy lifestyle,
So part of it is intelligent to want the best for your child, but there are three things you need to consider when you're parenting. Number one, what is your own internal world? What are your own internal motivations? One. Two, what is the proper development of all children? Child psychology. You need to know some basics there, and what's appropriate for a kid. And three is what are my child's strengths and weaknesses? What is the next best step for them? I want them to be, the goal of parenting is to produce normal, responsible, independent children. That's the goal of parenting. So the parent, if you're looking at as a third party perspective, is what in my nurturing of this child, what is best for the child? Not what I will be viewed as in the shul as the big master. as a guy sits toward the kiddish table and says, "Yeah, my son got this." That's the children. Just a little drops it in there. We've all heard that, you know what I mean? The kid becomes like, and it's very hard to not, use that nachas to get that satisfaction. I don't want to minimize it. I just want to accept it as being a reality everybody here around the table has to contend with. It's a powerful emotion. Possibly the most, I don't know. Okay, but that's the measurement. So it may be the best thing for your child is to go to Queens College, because that's where they'll because if let's say you're gonna push them to do an academic load that if they got into the Ivies, they could not sustain, and they're gonna have to leave after one semester. It makes them feel horrible that they're losers. Sometimes you push too much, it's only going to be a disaster. You have to see what's really best for the child.
But I think most parents, I'm guessing, I agree that the straw man sort of extreme for the ego, obviously that's not right, because a child is not like an accessory. But I suspect most parents probably are struggling in a fog of life, and they're kind of saying, what's the best way for my child to be successful? And they're not. I don't think most parents are trying to do for image only. But then again, I don't really know. But.
Okay, so that's also going to be depending on what culture you're in, what society you're in. You know what I'm saying? If you're living in the Upper East Side and you're sending your kid to a private school in the Upper East Side, it's going to be really socially uncool to say, "Yeah, my kid's going to go to Queens. You can go to Horseman, please. No problem." No, that is not going to be. You are going to look like, you're insane.
But that wouldn't happen. You would send your kid to a $40,000 a year private school that just is worse than Queens. Like,
right, I understand that. Right, I understand that. Right, but I'm just saying, depending on what world you're in, but if you're like in, if you're in chillaxed West Coast, Northern California, okay, that's not their culture. It's not that super competitive culture. You know what I'm saying? There's a certain benefit. There's certain more reality there. Right. I'm just giving again.
Right.
Each. So let me ask you this question now. Based upon if you're taking from the Avram world, when are you going to have kids? Because that's my mandate. Within marriage. Okay. Okay. Right. Very important point. With whom?
Your wife.
With your wife and with a person who shares your vision of the same Abrahamic vision and mission. How many?
As many as possible.
Well, at least the male, the boy and the girl, and then after that, it's what you can really handle. Realistically, as you said, then there'll be variables like, well, if I'm having 35 kids, I can't manage it. I can only manage psychologically 5, 4, whatever it may be. Like how often? In other words, what's the spacing? What's the metric of spacing?
You mean like when you're breastfeeding or pregnant kind of thing?
No, how long are you going to wait between children? In the rat race world, what's the when you what's the consideration? Well, it depends. Whatever's really convenient.
Yeah.
Here is going to be basically when I'm really physically, psychologically able to do that. Okay? All right. Now let's keep on going. 3a. What part of humanity does the oral law say is obligated is being fruitful and multiply? No, the oral law. Who is that a mitzvah for? Jews.
So that's where it says Jews. It's for Jews.
Well, it's part of the 613 mitzvahs. If you have the 7 mitzvahs they know, is one of them having children? No. It'll happen, obviously, but it's not an obligation. If a non-Jew wants to have no children, it's not a problem.
And it's only for men, right?
Yeah. Interesting. The man has an obligation of not women. They're the helpful partners. We'll get to that. Let's deal with the idea is so it's interesting that the written Torah seems to be saying that's all humanity. The oral Torah is limited to Jews only.
So is there a contradiction?
That seems to belong. That's a contradiction, right? So we're gonna, Now, part of the solution, B. Here's a key thing, which you may or may not know. What prerequisites does the man and woman have to do before fulfilling the mitzvah? Ideally. What is a prerequisite for having children? Married, so they have kedushin, marriage, and within the kedushin, and their own says kedushin and ksuba, having, and also that there's they have a full Jewish wedding.
And are we already at part? Does it say? Is it in the oral law about like her not being nida and going to the mikvah, or is that not?
They would, that's prior,
Later.
but that's from a different part. They would still, if they were still a nida, they would still fill the mitzvah. But primarily even if they would have it out of wedlock, you would fill the mitzvah. But ideally, the ideal mitzvah is having your children with coming from a couple who's married with kedushin. With kedushin, that gets the next question is, why would Jewish marriage be called kedushin, which is the word kedusha, holiness? So why is that? Why is marriage called, has the element kedushin? But not every mitzvah would be called. Not every mitzvah is you are deemed kadosh, but this specifically is linked to holiness.
It's like Shabbos.
Well, actually, goes back prior, goes back to Adam.
It's, personally Yom Kippur, every Avera that you had before that was kind of left behind and the world was being empty.
But that's a result, not a cause. That's showing the magnitude of the new state. The question is, what is the substance of the new state? Why is it kedusha? What's the
idea that now that you're in this state which allows you to find God in this way?
So kedusha, holiness, which also means separateness, means that you are dedicating, and that's why kedusha is expressed in two different realms by food and sex. Your two basic drives are exclusively directed to a singular objective. So I'm now directing my sexuality, my romance, to one thing: building a Jewish home. To the exclusion of, that's why kedusha, when there's the marriage, is to the exclusion of anybody else. And absolutely a relationship which is built upon the exclusivity of directing all of our sexuality and our romance to one exalted end. That's what makes it holy. Versus, not having sex outside of marriage, which is the next question, is why is that a problem? Why is that an issue? Or having sex with a prostitute.
Well, there's lots of layers of problems with that.
I didn't say there's one more.
There's not one answer to that. I mean, that's not a simple answer. I mean, the simple answer is that you're supposed to, wait to be married.
But why?
To.
That's from a technical halachic standpoint, true, but well, in other words, because by definition, it's assumed that it's not for building a civilization. There's sex which is building a home, and there's sex which is for entertainment. Unless it's defined in a certain context, it has to be assumed as sexual entertainment, which the Hebrew word is nut, which is promiscuousness.
When you're married, you can have sex. Is not. I mean, I guess it's all about your home because you're.
Right, but it's part of keeping the vibrancy of the home. So
Okay.
even though that the couple is post, the woman, she is either she's pregnant or she's post menopause, and there's no possibility of having an additional
That's
child,
different if that's her
but it's
religion.
still within the framework and the rubric of building and maintaining the home.
That's what makes Judaism so different from other religions. We, as long as you're married and not Anita, we are all about having.
Yes, because there's in addition to the mandate of, as long as you're part of building and maintaining the home, the other dimension of psychological well-being, which is a part of sexuality as well, is also an important element.
So you can use prophylactic.
So then,
if you've satisfied the number of kids.
so therefore we get to what is a permissible method. So the basic, it's interesting, that gets into a halachic detail, but you can only use birth control which does not interrupt the normal mode of the sexual act. So a condom is out, but the pill and IUD and diaphragm would be permissible.
Never use it.
I wouldn't say never. Never.
There's
I
always
wouldn't say never.
Yeah.
That's generally not.
Yeah.
Ask your local rabbi for a few cases. We're not going to that.
Yeah.
But by and large, I'm not going to the never is a long time in Judaism.
Okay, I have a question.
All right, so what's that? But do you understand that point? In other words, succinctly, now there are other issues by the prosecutor. So the succinctly is, if you as a Jew are trying to direct your sexuality to partner with God to build a civilization, and has to be in a framework where it's evident that it's for the higher purpose called kedusha, it has to be in the home, it has to be in a married state. So if it's done outside the married state, it's evident that it must be for what? The default setting, which is sexual entertainment. Not for the higher goal, because if it was, it had to be part of a commitment ceremony, which is a disciplined commitment ceremony. This is the parameters, these are the boundaries, and that's it. If it's not in that, it's obvious, because man's natural tendency is to engage in sexuality for entertainment purposes. That's what America's all about.
So we think through the lens of the Mishnah Torah, that we can deduce that you can't. That there has to be the prerequisite of marriage, or sex is supposed to be being a form of conducting it.
How the issue about whether or not can that be a way of creating marriage is another issue, but that's a separate issue. I'm just trying to show you the bigger picture. What I'm trying to get to is to show you how the narratives of the written Torah interface with the explanations of the oral law. We're trying to show how these work together. We're not done yet, so we're moving down. Keep on going.
Sorry, this is a purely technical and sort of favorite question, but if you have kids in another context, right?
Yes.
You're out of wedlock with a non-Jew, etc.
Yes.
Even though it might violate other mitzvot, does it technically still this one?
So if let's say two Jews, let's say two Jews live together and they have 5 kids, they would fulfill the mitzvah.
Okay.
That would be done in an improper or imperfect way. That's A. If a guy had a relation with a non-Jewish woman, they have 5 kids, he would not fulfill the mitzvah. But now this is a real thought problem, which is advanced. But if they would convert, he would. I don't want to get into that little brain fog with you. I'm not getting into that. They would call these gets into the finer points of the law. Again, we're still at the macro level. I want to go micro. I don't get sucked into that. There's a lot of stuff here. I'm trying to keep it somewhat simple. I want to get to the bottom of the stuff, and then we're going to put everything together because I'm in the OT already. Now, interestingly enough, why would premarital relations and prostitutes be allowed before the giving of the Torah? Luckily, it was. Before the giving of the Torah, a guy met a woman, and they lived together. They were married. She left. They were divorced. What we call in America common law marriage. If you wanted to see a prostitute, not a problem. It was not a technical violation. Wasn't a problem, and is not a problem for a Gentile. I mean, otherwise, don't practice unsafe sex. Don't do stupid things. It's a general mandate for all mankind. But why is that? And this gets into the and then I'm going to swing that into why would it be healthy? I want to say that I made a little typo there. Why would it be unhealthy to force non-Jewish people to keep the Jewish standards of kedusha? I made a little
That
typo
would
there.
be unhealthy.
Unhealthy. And that's really that E and F are related.
They're not bound by the halacha.
No, but so my question is, well, why did the Torah? In other words, there is 7 laws. In other words, a non-Jew cannot steal, cannot murder, cannot commit adultery, cannot be a karbal chaim. Can't do idolatry,
These
can't.
things are very different than be fruitful.
I understand that, but no, it's not. I want to share from the Torah. In other words, the Torah system is for all of humanity, Jew and non-Jew alike. But their covenant, their responsibility is different than ours. The question is, why are they not obligated to do that? Why does the Torah not see fit to that?
Not obligated to be fruitful, because I think it's a different question.
In other words, why are they not obligated to be fruitful and multiply? Why do they not have to get married with kedusha?
Well, from a maybe not a point I would share to like non-Jews, but maybe we don't want them to keep being fruitful and multiplying.
No, because
okay.
you see that Adam was sort of in a general way blessed to do that.
Okay.
Because if you are saying this from halacha, from Torah, we are the ones who give them Torah. It wasn't given to non-Jews, given to us, therefore we have to.
But the Torah was given for all humanity.
But in the context of the Shivim, they know.
Yeah. So my question is, why was it not included?
Yeah.
Or why was it not added? Why was not the 8th mitzvah or the 9th mitzvah? You know what I'm saying? So the bottom line is, the reality is that everybody here knows that this level of discipline is not simple. To maintain that all your sexuality be manifest within the institution of married life. And in fact, until the Jews were having or defined as an Am Kadosh, it was up to each person's level what they could do. You know what I mean? If you were up to the level of it, fine. If you were not up to it and you needed to visit a prostitute, you visit a prostitute. It was up to your discretion, your own personal where you're at. But when the Jews got the mandate of being an Am Kadosh, we had to exert ourselves, if you will, to be on this more to live this kind of a much more disciplined existence. You would not be productive for the other cultures to live like that, where that's not part of the aim and goal of their existence. You know what I'm saying? It's just it would be just simply too difficult. It's like telling a person who's way out of shape, now you need to work out for 2 hours. The Jews our mandate is to be involved in kedusha. So therefore, that's our discipline. But to give that program to other people would be why that would not be helpful. Because they can't do it. They can't do it. Jews themselves struggle to do it. So let's just you know what I mean. So this is our challenge, and therefore, I want to get the last point. I'm going to put it all together because we're in the OT. Why is being fruitful and multiply only an obligation to Jews who are part of an Abrahamic culture?
Yeah, because you could say, well, because the Torah says it's only out.
No, that's a tautology. Yeah, that's no.
There are Jews who are not part of.
In other words, the essence of the Abrahamic culture is to create a wisdom-based society where you're trying to grow as an individual, as a family, and as a society. So therefore, to have this rigor and this discipline fits into with the general motif of the entire with the Jewish civilization trying to accomplish. If you don't have that, and you're essentially the default of the rat race, so why are you forcing people to have kids, which are just going to be, all things being equal, extensions of their ego, their legacy, their instruments of legacy? There's no point to have. Our kids are going to happen. The world's not going to become underpopulated. In other words, without that educational framework, there's no, as they say, there's no mitzvah in pushing kids to be in the world where people are not, where their culture is not a redemptive culture by design. You know what I'm saying? the Abrahamic culture is to be redempted by design. So therefore, to bring kids into that world, there is a chance. And to the extent of the Jewish culture being high or low, depending on its circumstance, the kids will have a chance. But if, therefore, it makes sense to obligate to have such a kid, to be a partner with Hashem, to bring in kids, to lead a growth-oriented, redemptive existence. But to obligate people who are part of the rat race world to have kids, well, what are you accomplishing? And to live a puritanical kind of elements of puritanical existence without the bigger picture. That's just being disciplined in one little corner without where's the goal. There's no point of the if you don't have the end, doing certain random means, you're not going to accomplish anything. That's the basic point. So I want to put everything in one package. Is that the Torah was given specifically in two modalities. One is story, narrative based, we call the written Torah, which show the larger motifs, the philosophical principles, the ethics, and then within that are the mitzvot come down to legally take a snapshot of a certain element, which is going to be expressing that larger, bigger picture. So that's why you have to have the Torah Shabbat, the big picture principles coming in as expressed in the stories, and then the specific halachic obligation coming within that context to give you the greater meaning, and then gives you by the structure. You can see how the structure has meaning being influenced by that narrative mode. A narrative is a better way to teach ethics and ideas and philosophy. The legal element is not that. But if you don't, that's why you need to have both. That's why it's the Torah and the mitzvah, and it lives in that context. That's why you need to have this duality. Okay. Another big example, without fleshing out more, is we talk about in the Seder. We're always we're talking about different parts of the story of the Exodus, and then we're actually doing a mitzvah, which is embodiment, that's acting it out. You know what I'm saying? So you see a narrative with the concepts of the Abrahamic culture, and there's a manifestation in the halachic expression of what they call the mitzvah. I'm only giving you one example, but this is the beginning. We're just showing you the big picture of how these two things fit together, and why it must there be two elements of study. You couldn't squeeze it all into one. You can have just narrative, which tell you general, broad stroke motifs, philosophy, and ethics. But as far as giving you a legal system to conduct a lifestyle, will not be sufficiently rigid enough or clear enough to make that happen. I'm just trying to give you the totality of how, at least how the Rambam is seeing how these two things work together. Okay. Well, we'll build on this on a weekly basis. All right, guys.
Beautiful.